Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. It was a Thursday evening like any other. I came home late, exhausted from work, ready to collapse on the couch and unwind. Jamie had already beaten me to it. She sat there, tucked into the corner of the couch, one leg curled beneath her, a glass of wine in hand. She didn't say much when I walked in, just a casual nod of acknowledgement, eyes still glued to her phone. It was the kind of routine evening we'd fallen into over the years, no grand gestures, no surprises, just comfort in the mundane. I kicked off my shoes and sank into the chair across from her, scrolling through my phone to catch up on the day's events. I didn't think much of the quiet between us. It was the kind of silence that came with time, the silence of two people who no longer needed to fill the air with constant chatter. I thought it was comfortable. I thought we were comfortable. Alex, she said suddenly, breaking the stillness. I glanced up, catching her eyes briefly before they darted away, back to her phone. There was something strange about her voice, calm, too calm, like she was rehearsing her words in her head. Yeah. I replied, distracted. She hesitated for a second, and I could see the tension in her shoulders. We need to talk. Those 4 words snapped me out of my daze. I sat up, setting my phone down, and gave her my full attention. We hadn't had a serious talk in a while, but this wasn't the usual, we need to talk about bills or household stuff. I could feel it. There was weight behind it. Okay, what's going on? I asked, trying to keep my tone light, but already feeling a knot forming in my stomach. Jamie took a sip of her wine and then set the glass down carefully on the coffee table, as if the action itself was buying her time. She didn't look at me right away, just stared at the rim of the glass, her fingers lightly tapping against it. Finally, she lifted her gaze, meeting my eyes with a strange mix of determination and guilt. I'm going on a date tomorrow. It took a second for her words to register. I blinked, sure I'd misheard her. A date? With someone else? No, that couldn't be right. Wait, what? I laughed, but it came out awkwardly. You're kidding, right? Jamie didn't smile. She didn't laugh. Her expression stayed neutral, and my stomach dropped. I'm not kidding, Alex, she said softly. I'm going on a date, with David. David? My voice came out sharper than I intended. I stood up, pacing toward the window to avoid looking directly at her. The name triggered something inside me. David from work. I knew him. He wasn't just some faceless colleague, he was the guy who always seemed a little too comfortable around Jamie. The guy who hung around at office parties, making jokes that straddled the line of inappropriate. Jamie, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean you're going on a date? You're married. To me. She flinched slightly at my words but held her ground. I know. I know this sounds crazy, but, crazy. Yeah, it sounds insane. You don't just decide to go on dates when you're married. She sighed, running a hand through her hair, her fingers trembling slightly. Alex, I've been feeling stuck. Like we've just been going through the motions. I love you, but it feels like everything's the same, day after day. I'm bored, and I need, bored. Bored of what, Jamie? Me. I snapped, my voice rising. Is that what this is? You're bored, so now you think it's okay to go off with David like this is some open relationship? It's not about David, she said, her voice wavering for the first time. It's about me. I've been feeling disconnected, like there's something missing, something I can't explain. I thought maybe going on this date would help me figure it out. I stared at her, my mind racing. Was this real? Was she really standing here, telling me she needed to go on a date with some other guy to figure out her feelings? Figure what out? I demanded, my hands gesturing wildly. Jamie, we've been married for 6 years. We have a life together, a house, plans for the future. And now you're saying you need to date someone else. How is that going to help anything? She looked down, avoiding my eyes, her voice small. I don't know, Alex. I just feel so trapped sometimes. I need something different. Different? I spat the word out like it tasted bad in my mouth. Different like what? What are you looking for, Jamie? Is it excitement? Adventure? What is it that I'm not giving you? Jamie's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly, her expression hardening. This isn't about you not giving me something. It's about me needing to feel something else. I'm suffocating, Alex. Suffocating, I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. I turned away from her, running my hands through my hair as I tried to calm down. But how could I calm down when my wife was standing in front of me, talking about how suffocated she felt in our marriage? Jamie, I said, my voice softer now, almost pleading. We can work through this. We can do counseling or take a trip. Hell, we can do anything. But this? This is not the answer. She stood up then, stepping closer to me, her eyes searching mine for something. Forgiveness? Understanding? I didn't know. I'm not saying this because I want to hurt you, she said, her voice cracking. I just need to try this. I need to know what it feels like. To be with someone else. I asked bitterly, the words cutting into me as they left my mouth. She didn't answer right away, just nodded slowly. Yes. The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with unspoken emotions. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand that she take it all back, but the truth was sitting there between us, too heavy to ignore. Jamie was serious. She wasn't asking for permission, she was telling me what was going to happen. When? I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow night, she replied. I'm meeting him after work. I swallowed hard, trying to process everything. I felt like I was losing her, like she was slipping away right before my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Do you expect me to just sit here and wait for you to come back? I asked, my voice cold. I don't know what I expect, she admitted. I just need to do this. For me. I didn't say anything else. What was there left to say? Jamie turned and walked toward the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind spinning with questions I wasn't sure I wanted the answers to. The days following Jamie's announcement felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Every morning, I'd roll over in bed, hoping to find that the conversation we'd had was just some twisted product of my imagination. But there she was, beside me, distant and quiet, as if nothing had changed. And maybe, for her, nothing had. For me, everything was different. I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head, I'm going on a date, with David. The sharpness of it cut deeper each time. I kept asking myself where things had gone wrong. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of building a life together, and now she was saying she was bored. It didn't make sense. How could something that had once been so full of love, so full of connection, have come to this? Determined not to lose her, I tried to fix it. I thought if I could reignite the spark, maybe things would go back to normal. Jamie wanted excitement, she wanted something new, so I gave it my best shot. I started planning. I booked reservations at fancy restaurants, arranged spontaneous getaways, scheduled date nights as if I could outdo whatever allure David had with effort alone. The first weekend after Jamie's announcement, I surprised her with a trip to a cabin a few hours away. Secluded, peaceful, surrounded by nature. I thought maybe the quiet, the simplicity, would remind us of what we had. I even bought her favorite wine, hoping it would create a moment where we could just talk, really talk. When we arrived, the cabin was everything I'd hoped for, cozy, nestled between tall trees with a lake just beyond the back porch. Jamie looked around, impressed, but there was a detachment in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. She smiled, but it felt thin, like she was doing it for my benefit. That evening, we sat by the fire. I had set up a picnic outside, complete with her favorite cheese and crackers. We sipped wine as the sky turned orange and pink, the sun sinking behind the trees. For a moment, it almost felt like the old days, just the two of us, enjoying the quiet together. But then I had to bring it up. I couldn't help myself. "Jamie," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Are we okay?" She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she had been waiting for this question. She took a long sip of her wine before answering. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm trying to figure it out." I frowned. "What do you mean, figure it out?" "We've been together for 6 years, Jamie. What is there to figure out?" She looked down at her glass, swirling the wine around, her lips pursed. "I don't know, Alex. I feel like I've lost a part of myself. Like everything we do is so predictable. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but it's true." "Predictable?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "Is that such a bad thing? We've built a life together. We have stability, a home. Predictability doesn't mean things are broken." "But it feels broken to me," she said quietly, still not meeting my eyes. "I'm not the same person I was when we got married. I've changed. And I feel like, I don't know, like something is missing." "Something's missing?" I echoed, my frustration growing. "What's missing, Jamie? Is it me? Am I not enough anymore?" Her silence spoke volumes. She sighed deeply, finally looking at me with a mixture of guilt and sadness. "It's not about you, Alex. It's about me. I need to feel something different. I need to know that I still have options, that I haven't lost myself in our routine." I stared at her, trying to understand, but it was like she was speaking a different language. "So that's what David is. An option?" "He's not the point," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It's not about him. It's about me needing to see if there's more to life than this. I thought maybe the date would help me sort through what I'm feeling." "It's not that I don't love you, then why isn't that enough?" I interrupted, my voice cracking. "If you love me, why do you need something else?" "Jamie, I'm trying here. I'm planning trips, I'm doing date nights, what else do you need from me?" She looked at me, her eyes softening. "I see that you're trying, Alex. I do. But it's not about grand gestures or trips or dates. It's deeper than that. I need to figure out what I want, what makes me happy. And I don't know if this," she gestured between us. "I don't know if this is it anymore." The weight of her words crushed me. I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. How could I argue with that? How could I fix something when she didn't even know if she wanted to be here? "Jamie," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I love you. I love us. I thought we were happy. I thought we were building something together." She wiped away a tear, looking out at the lake, her expression unreadable. "I thought so too." The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of strained conversations and forced smiles. Jamie was there, physically, but I could feel her pulling away, emotionally retreating to a place I couldn't reach. Every effort I made to connect seemed to fall flat, and no amount of quiet dinners or shared sunsets could bring back the warmth we used to have. Back home, things only got worse. I kept up the date nights, the spontaneous gestures, but each time, Jamie responded with that same detached politeness. I felt like I was. The night Jamie went on her date with David, everything in me shifted. I wasn't the man who was holding on anymore, I was the man who had reached his breaking point. She left the house that evening without much of a goodbye, just a quick glance and a half-hearted, "I'll be back later." I watched her go, standing by the window as she drove away. I felt the familiar anger bubbling up, the disbelief that this was actually happening. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. I stayed there for a long time, staring into the empty street, feeling hollow. Midnight passed, and Jamie still hadn't come home. That's when the anger fully set in. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through photos of us, our wedding day, vacations, all the memories of the life we had built. A life she was throwing away for what? Some cheap thrill. By the time the clock hit 1 a.m., I had made my decision. I wasn't going to sit here and wait for her to come back to me when she had already made her choice. I stood up abruptly, the decision feeling like a heavy weight had lifted off my chest. I couldn't save this marriage, but I could save myself. I could take back control. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. First stop. The hardware store, where I bought new locks. If Jamie wanted freedom, I'd give it to her. By the time I got back, the house was eerily quiet. I moved through it methodically, replacing the locks on every door. Each twist of the screwdriver felt like a small victory, a piece of my life that I was taking back. When I was done, I stood there, staring at the new lock on the front door, feeling strangely at peace. Next, I went to the bedroom. I started gathering her things, clothes, shoes, jewelry, all the little pieces of her life that had once felt so intertwined with mine. I boxed them up neatly, like I was packing away the remnants of a person I no longer recognized. As I moved around the house, packing up Jamie's belongings, I recorded everything on my phone. Every action. Every word. I knew I'd need it for the divorce. If she thought she could just waltz in and out of this marriage, she was wrong. I wasn't going to be the victim in this. The house, now half empty, felt strange. Her presence lingered in the photos on the walls, the scent of her perfume that clung to the bedroom. But everything else? Gone. By the time I finished, it was nearly dawn, and I collapsed on the couch, staring at the pile of boxes by the front door. I was exhausted, but something inside me wouldn't let me sleep. The anger had settled into something colder, more resolute. She wasn't coming back. And if she did, it wouldn't matter. The locks were changed. The door to our life was closed. The next morning, I called my lawyer at 9 a.m. sharp. I wasn't going to waste time. I needed to start the process, to sever this connection cleanly and efficiently. The conversation was brief, mostly instructions about what documents to gather, what evidence I'd need to support the divorce. I had everything ready, texts, recordings, my own notes. Jamie had given me all the proof I needed. As I hung up the phone, I heard the unmistakable sound of Jamie's car pulling into the driveway. My heart raced, not out of fear, but out of the anticipation of what was about to happen. This would be the final conversation. A few minutes later, she knocked. The sound was soft, hesitant. I opened the door, my face set in stone. Jamie stood there, looking disheveled. Her hair was a mess, and her makeup smudged, like she'd spent the night crying. She stared at the new lock on the door, then at me, her eyes filled with confusion. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice shaky. I stepped aside, allowing her to see the boxes neatly stacked by the door. "Your things," I said coldly. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, her face pale. "Alex, what are you doing?" "What am I doing?" I repeated, my voice low and controlled. "I'm doing what you wanted, Jamie. I'm giving you freedom." Her lip trembled as she looked at the boxes, realization dawning on her. "You changed the locks." "Yes," I said flatly. "You don't live here anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. She opened her mouth to say something but stopped, her gaze falling to the ground. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, can we just talk?" "Talk about what?" I asked, crossing my arms. "You've already made your choice. You went on the date. You didn't care about what that would do to me, so why should I care now?" She wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to collect herself. It wasn't what I thought it would be. David, he wasn't who I thought he was. Things went too far, and I didn't want. I cut her off, my voice cold and emotionless. Jamie, I don't care. Her eyes snapped up to mine, shock written all over her face. You don't care. No, I said firmly. I don't. I cared when you told me you were bored. I cared when I tried everything to make things better. I cared when you left to go on a date with another man. But now, I'm done caring. Alex, please, she begged, stepping toward me, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can work through it. We've been through so much together. No, Jamie, I interrupted. You made a choice. You walked out of this house, out of this marriage, the moment you decided that excitement was more important than what we had. Tears streamed down her face now, and she shook her head in disbelief. But we can fix it. There's nothing to fix, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's over. She stared at me, as if she didn't recognize the person standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize myself anymore either. But what I did know was that I wasn't going back. Not after everything she had done. Jamie took a shaky breath, her voice small. So that's it. You're just throwing everything away. I shook my head slowly. No, Jamie. You did that. I'm just making it official. She stood there, frozen, unable to find the right words. The weight of what was happening finally hit her, and I could see the regret in her eyes. But it was too late. The damage was done. I'll have the divorce papers ready in a few days, I said, my tone final. You can come by to sign them, or we can do it through the lawyers. Your call. Jamie didn't respond. She just nodded slowly, her face crumpling as she turned and walked out the door. For a moment, I watched her leave, waiting for some part of me to break, to feel the loss. But all I felt was relief. I closed the door behind her, locking it with the new key. There was no turning back now. I was free. It was late afternoon when Jamie came back, the same day I had packed up her things. I was sitting in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of cold coffee, trying to process everything that had happened. The new locks were already installed, and the boxes containing her belongings were still stacked neatly by the front door. I hadn't moved them. Part of me hoped I wouldn't have to. The knock on the door startled me. It wasn't the kind of confident knock I'd expected from her. It was softer, almost timid, as if she wasn't sure whether she should even be there. I stood up slowly, heart heavy, knowing what was about to happen. I opened the door to find Jamie standing there. She looked completely different from the woman who had left the house last night for her date. Her hair was a mess, strands sticking out in every direction. Her makeup was smeared, mascara running down her cheeks like she had been crying. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she stood there with a hollow expression, as if the life had been drained out of her. Alex, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just stared at her, taking in the wreck of a person standing before me. This wasn't the confident woman who had told me she was going on a date for excitement. This was someone else, someone broken, someone lost. Why are you here, Jamie? I finally asked, my voice steady, but cold. I stepped aside, letting her into the house, though part of me wished I hadn't. She stepped in cautiously, glancing at the boxes near the door. Her face crumpled when she saw them, but she didn't say anything. She just turned back to me, eyes pleading. She started, then stopped, her throat tightening. I made a mistake. I folded my arms, leaning against the wall. A mistake. I repeated, my tone flat. You made a choice, Jamie. That's different. She flinched at my words, wiping at her face, as if trying to erase the mess that had become of her. David, he wasn't who I thought he was. it didn't go the way I thought it would. I raised an eyebrow, trying to keep the frustration bubbling up inside of me under control. What did you expect? I asked, my voice a little sharper now. That you'd have some magical night that would fix everything? That running off to another man would somehow solve whatever it is you thought was wrong with us? She shook her head, tears filling her eyes again. No. I don't know what I thought. She stopped, taking a deep breath. Things got out of control, Alex. David, he pushed things. I didn't want to. I told him to stop, but he didn't listen. For a moment, her words hung in the air, and I felt a knot in my stomach tighten. I knew what she was implying, but I couldn't find the words to respond. I looked at her, waiting for her to continue, my mind racing between anger and pity. Jamie's voice cracked as she continued, her eyes downcast. He forced me into things, Alex. Things I didn't want. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I didn't know what to do. I felt so trapped. She looked up at me, her face filled with desperation. I'm so sorry. There was a time when hearing those words from her would have shattered me. But now, I just felt numb. I leaned back against the wall, staring at her, trying to understand how we had gotten here. Jamie, I said slowly, carefully choosing my words, you put yourself in that situation. You made the decision to go on that date. You left this house knowing exactly what you were doing. And now you want me to feel sorry for you. Her lip trembled, and she looked down at the floor. I didn't expect it to turn out like this. You thought what? I interrupted, my voice rising in frustration. That you could just walk away from this marriage, chase some thrill, and everything would be fine. That you could have your excitement and then come back to me like nothing happened. Jamie shook her head, tears spilling onto her cheeks. No. I didn't think that. I don't know what I thought. I wasn't thinking straight. I was so lost. I made a terrible mistake. Her words echoed in the empty space between us, but I didn't feel any closer to forgiving her. She was saying all the right things, admitting to everything, but it was too late. The damage was done. I took a deep breath, my voice steady again. Jamie, I tried. I tried to fix things between us. I tried to be there for you, to make things better. But you didn't want that. You wanted something else. And now you have to live with that choice. She looked up at me, panic flashing across her face. Please, Alex. We can work through this. I know I hurt you, but we can figure it out. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy, I shook my head, cutting her off. No. We're past that now. You made your choice, and I made mine. Her face crumpled, and she took a step toward me, reaching out. Alex, please. Don't do this. Don't leave me like this. I need you. I stepped back, out of her reach, and shook my head. You needed me before. You needed me when things got tough, when you felt lost. But you didn't come to me. You went to someone else. I'm not going to be your fallback. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. It was a painful sight, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I just felt done. I'll have the divorce papers ready in a few days, I said quietly. You can sign them, or we can go through the lawyers. It's up to you. Jamie looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Alex, please. I can't do this without you. You should have thought about that before you walked out, I said firmly. It's too late now. I turned away, walking toward the front door, leaving her there on the couch. I paused for a moment, hand resting on the doorknob, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. But there was no going back. Not now. I opened the door and stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face like a splash of cold water. I felt strangely at peace, like I had finally made the decision I should have made long ago. The weight of the past 6 years was still heavy on my shoulders, but now, at least, I could move forward. As I walked down the street, I didn't look back. There was no need to. Jamie's chapter in my life was over. And I was ready for whatever came next.